Hi, this is Brendan from Watto Training, and in this tutorial we take a look at pedestrian crossings. A pedestrian is someone who is walking or running or using a wheeled recreational device such as rollerblades, skateboards, roller skates, or foot scooters, personal mobility device such as a rideable, motorized mobility device such as wheelchairs, motorized mobility scooters, and electric wheelchairs. The Transport Operations Road Use Management Road Rules Regulation 2009 states that giving way at a pedestrian crossing is as follows. A driver approaching a pedestrian crossing must drive at a speed at which the driver can, if necessary, stop safely before the crossing. A driver must give way to any pedestrian or any rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device on or entering a pedestrian crossing. A pedestrian crossing is an area of road at a place with white stripes on the road surface that run lengthwise along the road and are of approximately the same length and are approximately parallel to each other and are in a row that extends completely or partly across the road and with or without either or both of the following: a pedestrian crossing sign, alternating flashing twin yellow lights. Here are two examples of pedestrian crossings. Example 1, giving way to a pedestrian on a pedestrian crossing. Example 2, giving way to a pedestrian on a pedestrian crossing at a slip lane. In each of these examples, the driver must give way to the pedestrian on the crossing. 82. Overtaking or passing a vehicle at a children's crossing or pedestrian crossing. A driver approaching a children's crossing or pedestrian crossing must not overtake or pass a vehicle that is travelling in the same direction as the driver and is stopping or has stopped to give way to a pedestrian or a rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device on or entering the crossing. The example shows driver not passing a vehicle that has stopped to give way to a pedestrian at a pedestrian crossing. In the example, vehicle A has stopped to give way to a pedestrian on the crossing. Vehicle B must not overtake or pass vehicle A. 83. Giving way to pedestrians in a shared zone. A driver driving in a shared zone must give way to any pedestrian in this zone. Giving way to pedestrians at pedestrian crossings. If there's a dividing strip in the middle of the pedestrian crossing, you must remain stationary until the pedestrian has passed that middle point. If there's no dividing strip, you have to remain stopped until the pedestrian has fully crossed the crossing and reached the footpath at the other side of the road. It's important to use observation and scanning techniques to identify pedestrian crossings. Take note of road signs and road markings. In the photo on the right of screen, we can see pedestrian crossing coming up ahead due to the painted markings on the road. A quick note regarding children's crossings. Section 80. Stopping at a children's crossing. 1. A driver approaching a children's crossing must drive at a speed at which the driver can, if necessary, stop safely before the crossing. 2. A driver approaching or at a children's crossing must stop as near as practicable to, but before reaching the stop line at the crossing if A handheld stop sign is displayed at the crossing, or B, a pedestrian or a rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device is on or entering the crossing. 3. If a driver stops at a children's crossing for a handheld stop sign, the driver must not proceed until A, there is no pedestrian or rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device on or entering the crossing, and B, the holder of the sign, 1, no longer displays the sign towards the driver, or 2, otherwise indicates that the driver may proceed. 4. If a driver stops at a children's crossing for a pedestrian or rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device, the driver must not proceed until there is no pedestrian or rider of a bicycle or a personal mobility device on or entering the crossing. 5. For this section, if a children's crossing extends across a road with a dividing strip, the part of the children's crossing on each side of the dividing strip is taken to be a separate children's crossing. 6. A children's crossing is an area of a road, A, at a place with stop lines marked on a road, and 1. Children's crossing flags, or 2. Children's crossing signs and twin yellow lights, and B. Indicated by 1. 2 red and white posts erected on each side of the road, or 2. 2 parallel continuous or broken lines on the road surface from one side of the road completely or partly across the road, and C. Extending across the road between the posts or lines. Example 1. Driver stopped at stop line for pedestrians on a children's crossing with children crossing flags. Example 2 on right of screen. Driver stopped at stop line for pedestrian on a children's crossing with children's crossing signs and twin yellow lights. In each of these examples, the driver must stop at the stop line because there are pedestrians on the children's crossing. Children's crossings are usually part-time crossings that operate before and after school hours or at other times that may be approved by local councils. Aside from these times, the area is not a pedestrian crossing. When in use, red flags displaying the words children's crossing are used. Drivers must slow down and halt before the stop line when a pedestrian is on the crossing or waiting to cross, and remain stopped until all pedestrians leave the crossing. Shared crossings. Pedestrian crossings are sometimes used as children's crossings. When they are, the red flags will be shown and the above rules apply. Otherwise, they operate as a normal pedestrian crossing. And now back to pedestrian crossings. Parking or stopping near a pedestrian crossing. Park or stop within 20 metres before or 10 metres after a pedestrian crossing unless there are signs telling you different. Regulation 234. Crossing a road on or near a crossing for pedestrians. 1. A pedestrian must not cross a road or part of a road within 20 metres of a crossing on the road, except at the crossing or another crossing unless the pedestrian is A. Crossing or helping another pedestrian to cross an area of the road between tram tracks and the far left side of the road to get on or after getting off a tram or bus, or B. Crossing to or from a safety zone, or C. Crossing at an intersection with traffic lights and a pedestrian may cross diagonally sign, or D. Crossing in a shared zone, or E. Crossing a road or a part of a road from which vehicles are excluded either permanently or temporarily. 2. A pedestrian must not stay on a crossing on a road for longer than necessary to cross the road safely. 3. Subsection 2 does not apply to a person who is a crossing supervisor under the Act. 4. In this section, crossing means a children's crossing, marked foot crossing, or pedestrian crossing. Tips for driving across a pedestrian crossing. Search well ahead for hazards. Look left and right for pedestrians crossing or intending to cross the pedestrian crossing. Be ready to stop for any pedestrians. Stop and give way to any pedestrians who are crossing or are about to cross. Proceed when safe. If required to stop, stop behind the limit line. Pedestrian safety. Drivers should also take care to travel carefully in areas with children such as schools and playgrounds. Allow more time for a person with a disability or a senior pedestrian to cross the road. Reduce your speed at night around entertainment venues where people gather. High-risk areas. Extra caution should be exercised in areas of high vehicle and pedestrian concentration, such as near train stations, bus stops, and CBD areas. Pedestrians are advised to obey signals at crossings. Penalty applies for failure to do so. Always cross at a pedestrian crossing if one is available. Penalty applies for failure to do so. Never assume a driver has seen you or intends to stop. Never cross a road while using headphones or mobile phones. Always hold the hands of children when crossing the road. In this photo, we can see a pedestrian crossing in the foreground. Then we can see that we have a multi-lane roundabout, but also we have the contingency of the person walking from the right in the high-vis shirt up to where we are traveling at the roundabout. So drivers need to be aware that sometimes people do not use pedestrian crossings. Raised pedestrian crossings are located where there are high levels of pedestrian activity. They are raised to increase visibility for approaching drivers and slow down traffic. That one is at Lawton on the north side of Brisbane near the train station. Pedestrian fencing. Pedestrian fencing is installed to stop pedestrians walking across busy roads. The fencing directs pedestrians to controlled crossings. Pedestrian refuge islands. Pedestrian refuge islands are not pedestrian crossings. They are installed on busy or wide roads to help pedestrians cross in 2 stages. Sometimes they are used with a pedestrian crossing when a staged crossing is required. Are learner drivers in Queensland assessed on their interpretation and management of pedestrian crossings? Here we can see from the QSafe manual section 2.55 on crossings, and it tells us that each test circuit must include the range of crossing types detailed below except in cases where exemptions apply. Note that the most likely exemption will be that a specific driving situation or situations are not available within a particular area. In these cases, please use as many of the required specific driving situations as possible. Each test route must contain, you can see that a minimum range of 1 pedestrian crossing. Note, the range suggested is a minimum only. It is likely that more than the minimum specified will be covered throughout the test. So this information tells us that as part of the test circuit design, that it will probably include at least 1 pedestrian crossing if it's available. This photo shows us an area on the north side of Brisbane called Strathpine. Just around the corner on the left is the Transport and Main Roads Customer Service Centre where they do testing. And as a driver comes along here to take a left turn, they've got a few contingencies to manage. They have a pedestrian crossing. They also have traffic, as you can see on the right of screen, that comes around the corner as well, or over the train line on the right. So they've not only got to scan the pedestrian crossing, but they've got to merge with the traffic as well. So sometimes the pedestrian crossing can have other challenges surrounding it as well for a driver to manage. Pedestrian crossings in car parks. Anyone who's been to Helensvale on the Gold Coast will have seen this pedestrian crossing in the car park, and you can see it goes across, and that the drivers need to negotiate that as part of their assessment. And there's a mirror there as well because it's quite blind. You can also get pedestrian crossings in one-way situations. So this is up at Gympie on the just north of the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. We've got our pedestrian crossing in the foreground. Then we've got cars parked on the right side of the road and a bus on the left side of the road. Okay, so we're taking a look at signs, signals and road markings. And in the QSafe manual, the performance outcome is that the applicant should obey any regulatory road sign, traffic signal or road marking. So this is where pedestrian crossings would come in as well. In terms of a critical driving error for this particular performance outcome, a driver overtakes inappropriately, for example, overtaking when approaching a pedestrian/children's crossing, Queensland Road Rule 65. Giving way to pedestrians, this information comes directly out of the QSafe manual. Drivers must give way to pedestrians on a slip road. Drivers must give way to pedestrians on and entering a children's crossing. Drivers must give way to any pedestrian or cyclist on a marked foot crossing. Drivers in shared zones must give way to all pedestrians. So there's 4 dot points that a trainer would work on with a learner driver to make sure that they understand their requirements for those various giveaway situations. The other performance outcome that we just want to have a look at is drives to conditions, known as progress. The performance outcome is as follows. The applicant should progress with the general flow of traffic at a speed that is not excessive for the situation and without exceeding the speed limit. Acceleration should be smooth, progressive and appropriate for the traffic conditions. So there's a critical driving error, which is that the driver drives too fast for the situation. For example, adverse weather conditions or approaching a pedestrian/children's crossing and compromises safety, including in reverse. So I've just highlighted that key point there relevant to this tutorial. There's a general critical driving error as well that could be linked to a driver's performance in relation to pedestrian crossings, and that's 6.3.3, dangerous action. A dangerous situation is created by the applicant's driving, either action or inaction, that results in another road user, including pedestrian, being forced to take evasive action to prevent a collision or any other danger. Thanks for watching. This has been Brendan from Watto Training.